All right, everybody. Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. And this is going to be episode number 1 of my interview with a survivor series. And I'm very excited to introduce Edwina Townsend. She is an LPC, which stands for Licensed Professional Counselor. And I think she's a great first guest to have here because she has professional experience. But not only that, she has what I consider to be very important as well, personal experience going through this, growing up, and with multiple marriages. So, with that, how are you today, Edwina?
I'm fine. How are you?
Doing very good. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Awesome. So, I guess let's begin with the beginnings of the romantic relationships where you had multiple husbands that turned into to
Not
be
proud
nar-
of that. You don't want to have multiple husbands, but I had a couple. So
absolutely. So, in the beginning, I guess take us through what that was like in the beginning for you of meeting these gentlemen and what they were like.
um well, I don't know. I think it'd be helpful to kind of start even before the husband, but maybe like even the first
Oh,
boyfriend.
yep. Okay.
So and you know what, Jared? I think it's important to know just to get a frame of reference. I'm super petite and petite blonde thing. And I was also told that by my covert narcissistic mother that I didn't have a lot going for me. So if any boy liked you, you better take him up on it. So that is in my head, right? And so this boy, first boyfriend, you're high school 16, this boy liked me, and I'm glad to be picked. I'm glad somebody likes me. And but in hindsight, he wasn't very nice to me. At the pool, he would I don't know if you know how boys would wring a towel and pop you, and thought it was hysterical that it would hurt me and I would have bruises all over my legs. And that's just not okay. And I remember tolerating that because he was just being playful. It's not my, and he would even say, "It's not my fault you bruise easy. I'm just kidding around. You can't take a joke." And I remember that's kind of how it all started,
Mm.
this tolerating this disrespect, that's just not okay. And then, so that was high school. And then in college, I dated a person and kind of that same thing, the backhanded jokes. You can't take a joke. I'm just kidding. Um, but I love you and we're great. And, but not okay. Looking back, a lot of red flags that I didn't understand. But can I take a joke? He picked me. I'm so glad that somebody picked me. Because, with narcissists, it's not always bad, or toxic relationships. There's a lot of good stuff in there, right?
Sure.
Intermittent reinforcement that, I didn't have language for back then. And then, so the first husband, oh goodness, it's so classic now. It's, you just kind of go, oh goodness, did you not see it? So I'm waiting. I work at this, wait tables at this high end kind of seafood steak place. And this guy comes in and looks at me and says, "I am going to marry you." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "I've been coming here for 6 months." And I'm thinking, and in my mind, I should have thought stalker.
True.
And I'm like, oh, he thinks I'm cute or whatever. No, that's not okay. Like, that's just not okay. And I mean, just classic love bomb off the charts,
Sure.
right?
Instant shared fantasy is what it sounds like.
Oh, absolutely. And future faking beyond words, right? And even our first date, get dressed up, and I'm young and I'm putting myself through college, waiting tables. I have no money. I have nothing. And I grew up very modest. I mean, we had food, but there weren't a lot of extras, right? And so I'm this poor college kid. I have nothing. And I mean, this first date was insane. the nicest place. I had this big gift waiting for me. And first date.
So you pulled out all the stops here and acted pretty grandiose, is what it sounds like.
I've never had anybody just like this, luxury,
Sure.
and that's back in, 1982 or something, when the drinking age was 18. So I'm what, 20? So you could have a glass of wine or whatever, but he
Sure.
ordered the bottle, right?
Huh.
And back then, that order a bottle of wine, that was such a big deal. And I mean, within a month, he's asking me to marry him. At 2 months, he's buying furniture and bought me a ring. At 2 months.
Yeah, super quick.
Here's the craziest part. My parents loved him.
Funny how that works, right? Because your mother, she sowed the seeds for this, is what it sounds like too. And I think that's important to pull
So
out.
in
Where
this,
the way she talked to you and said, "Oh, you'll be lucky to get any male's attention."
and the stepdad too. So there's that. Those are two big pieces of this.
Terrible messaging.
So this person, very chameleon, very grandiose, very aggressive. He knew how to play it. He played into both the covert mom and the narcissistic stepdad, and he had them in the palm of his hands. He worked that. And so we were married. We got married at 6 months, and I remember thinking, this is too fast. I don't know about this, but I was so in, like it just took a life of its own and then on the honeymoon he changed.
So that's when the mask first
came
started to slip.
And I remember thinking, what is happening? Who is this person? The way he spoke to me, the weather changed. And it was so dramatic. And then a lot of physical aggression started. And it got bad. It got bad.
I think one of the big reasons they like to move so quickly is because the faster they move, the more power and control and influence they're going to have over your life. So that seems to be one of the hallmarks of what they do in the beginning.
And I do want to be authentic and real in this interview. And I'm telling you, I thought I was totally over it. I am having a visceral response, even talking about how bad it got.
Right.
Because you kind of forget. You just kind of like, oh gosh, that was a long time ago. I was young and stupid. We were kids. No, it was not okay. So it was and he had a whole life I did not know about. Some very inappropriate things, some very shady, sketchy deals going on. I mean, he had a whole life I had no idea about. And so I'm in college trying to finish up my degree, and I know it's bad, and just so many things, so many unfortunate, sad things happened. But I really couldn't tell anybody because he had isolated me. And then when I tried to share with, I remember trying to share with my parents, and they told me, kind of tough for you. Kind of, you made your bed, you have to lie in it, kind of thing. And he was very controlling in money, so I had no money, and I really didn't have a way out because I'm in college and I don't have a job. And so I told myself, you got to leave, and I got pregnant.
Oh.
And then I had a really difficult pregnancy, and I was in the hospital, and a lot of things went wrong. And he never went with me to any doctor visits or anything. I did everything by myself.
Right.
So I had this baby. So thankful the baby's healthy because I had been so sick. And I remember thinking, I got to get us both out. This person is not healthy. And because of his mismanage, narcissists don't handle money. Um, he got us in a whole big financial mess and he moved away. So that was my out. He moved
Right.
away. So I saved my money and filed for divorce. And so then I had this little baby and we did it. We did it on our own. So I got my degree and started working. And I had always wanted to be a therapist. And now I just had drive because I had this child.
So two things real quick. One, do you think he got you pregnant on purpose to try to trap you in the situation?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, because that's a common thing too.
Now I know that, but back then, of course,
Right.
I didn't have language to it. I really chalked it up to he has a tough backstory. Tough backstory. I'm going to tell you some tough stuff happened. So, in his defense, and looking back, also it was a very toxic family system for him,
Sure.
and I'm pretty sure his mom is a narcissist as well, and maybe his dad. Just very dysfunctional family. Very, but in my mind at that time, I chalked it all up to alcoholism and addiction.
Because I
And
can make it more tough too when they have a genuine victim story. And sometimes they play it up a little bit too.
it's a tough story,
Right.
and I'm going to tell you that was my heart. That's why he started drinking and smoking and gambling, is because it was such a tough backstory.
I think that's important to tell too, because when it's genuine like that and it really is a bad backstory, it makes people more likely to want to believe them and give them kind of an excuse for how they're acting now. So I think that's a very important piece to pull out.
Very difficult. I mean, and I don't want to say too much because it's like the whole town. The story was all over the news, and this family went through this horrific event, and everyone knew about it. And you know, it was a difficult, tragic event that happened in this family to one of his sisters. Just this story that you're just like, what? And just heartbreaking. And so, you, and then I'm super empathetic. And so, of course, all of it. But in my mind, I didn't have narcissism and all this language,
Right.
future faking and love bombing and, intermittent reinforcement. And then, because what he would do is in the marriage, we would have these huge fights and they would get pretty physical. And then, a lot of hurtful, horrible things would happen. And then, slap me around a little bit and throw me against the wall and the next day I have bruises. But I wasn't allowed to go out if I had bruises, but he would bring me jewelry.
Mm.
And you know how mad I get. You know how you make me go crazy. But
Blaming you.
I love you, right? So it's my fault I made him mad. It's my fault I bruise easy, but don't go out, but here's some jewelry.
The gift to cover it up. A more manipulation, I would call that. Now, you mentioned also the financial abuse, and
Oh,
that's
my goodness.
something else I hear a lot about. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what that looked like for you.
Well, that's been a theme of all of them is that so this person, you know, but I didn't have that language then.
Right.
And in my mind I was taught the man controlled the money. If the man wanted to spend the money, he's the one that made the money. I'm supposed to manage the house or whatever. But this guy had a gambling problem and would max out credit cards in Vegas and spend, he wanted to have the watch, the car, the boat, the jet skis, you know, but we didn't have money like that.
Right.
We were 22 and I'm in college. And so I was managing, trying to pay bills and there was no money. And then he moved away. And so when I finally got out of that marriage, I had $10 and a baby.
Oh. overwhelming just to think about.
Hey, looking back, I don't know how I did it. And then, of course, there's no child support with people like that or anything. So, yeah, we made it. I don't know how, but we did.
Right. So
Um,
he was
I could,
all about these image markers too, with all those jet skis and all that kind of
well,
wanted to show the life.
right. And, narcissists, they want the confidence, the competence without any effort. Like,
Right.
look at me, but I didn't do anything. It's all on credit cards. Look at all this stuff, but I didn't earn it. I really don't deserve it. I've just maxed out credit cards, right? But I want you to think I have value and look how great I am. But
Right.
I didn't do anything to deserve this.
Right.
But look how great I am.
And that's the entitlement shining through there. And it also reminds me of the expression how they say narcissists lie because the truth is offensive to them. And I was like, yeah, I could
Agree.
certainly see
Or
that.
but they also believe it. They believe
Oh,
their life.
sure. They believe, like, they become to believe the lies. So if you can go back and talk to that version of Edwina now, what
Oh,
would you tell
that
her?
young girl, that young, naive, gullible girl.
Yes.
I would say, oh, sweetie, no, no, no. Um, I would say you don't have to. In my mind, I had to be chosen, that I didn't have the luxury of choosing, right? Because, you know, a phrase I heard growing up, who do you think you are?
Mm,
And so I don't think I'm anybody. So I would just say, you don't need a guy. And I would just give her language. Do you like this person? Do you like this person? Do you like what they stand for? Because I'm not a materialistic person.
right.
And and just because your parents love this person, you don't, because they were big on this. You need to marry him. He's gonna take you off our hands.
That's something I've noticed too, is that narcissistic people, they have a way with other narcissistic people where they're kind of on the same page
Well,
and they're on the
and
same wavelength kind
right,
of thing.
right.
And
And
that it can make it for the person who's not that way. It can
mhm,
be extremely crazy making for them because you have a group that
mhm,
acts similar, that
mhm,
live by a similar guideline, which is not much, but they're living by the similar guideline. And
mhm,
it can really drive the people around them nuts.
mhm, mhm. And then, but I do want to add. So I went into therapy, and really, and I went to a Christian therapist, and that was not a great experience. But it landed on that I'm codependent, and I think that's all it landed on, codependency.
Mm,
Um, and I needed to pray more.
mm.
Oh, and I had low self esteem. Oh, and this therapist kept saying it's about your biological dad. He would not leave that one alone. And at the time, I was like, I just don't think it is. And because he felt like the abandonment piece was there, which it probably is. I mean, looking back,
Right.
it's there. That is a big piece. At that time, I didn't want to deal with that. And so and then, and nothing against Christian counselors. This one just it made me feel more guilt, that if I had been a better Christian
Right.
girl, this wouldn't have happened to me.
Yeah. And at
No,
that stage, that's not very helpful for you, I
no,
think.
it just makes you feel worse.
Yes. And I think that it's important for any therapist. You got to meet them where they are. Like,
Mm,
you can't take them to a stage 5 concept when
mm,
they're at stage 1 of
mhm.
the recovery process.
For me, this person, or my memory, and my memory could be, totally inaccurate, but that therapist, I went for help and trying to, unravel this narcissistic abuse. And there wasn't language about that back then, right? You diagnose someone with a personality disorder, but you didn't talk about these patterns of behavior or childhood trauma, or the therapist I went to didn't. And so it seemed like he had more of his own agenda of what therapy should be for me.
Mm,
And he, looking back, he was spot on with a lot of things, but it didn't land well with me at that
right.
time.
And that means to me, it was more about him trying to get the way he was thinking to you.
Quite possibly. That's what it feels like now, but I'm sure I gained some insight somewhere. I just have.
Sure.
I went a few times. I can't remember. I didn't have a lot of money, so I'm not sure I went that many times.
So how did you do this where, well, first you left the first husband. You can talk a little bit about how you got out of there. And then you have a child with $10 to your name. What on earth do you do from there?
So I got a job. I knew waiting tables I could make cash like that night. So I got that job, and then because I'm still in college. And then no, I had graduated. I was looking for a job, and so I got a job in sales and a job waiting tables because I wanted quick cash, and I knew waiting tables you could get cash, right? So unfortunately, I moved in with my parents for 6 months. That was worse than it was a roof over my head. It's fine. So I lived with them 6 months until I could afford an apartment because I got my first teaching job while I was going to go to graduate school. So I started teaching. In Texas, you have to teach before you can be a school counselor. And I was getting a double master's in school counseling and private practice. So because I knew as a single mom, I thought the school hours would be the only way I could be the kind of mom I wanted to be. So it was all designed around her and to be the best mom I could be for her. So, I mean, we lived on very little, but I was able to get a little place for us and taught school and went to graduate school at night.
You were like a superhero back then.
I don't know, but I made it work. I don't know how, but we didn't have a lot, but I learned a lot of life lessons, and I'm frugal. I can stretch a dollar.
There you go. Now, I bet you that your parents, like your mother and stepfather, did they guilt and shame you and blame you for for that relationship not working out, the marriage?
I got I got shamed for marrying him in the first place.
For the very same thing they wanted you to do. Funny how that works.
So I got that shame, and then the language with them, I was a scapegoat, and I just couldn't do anything right in their eyes. So it was more, it's your own fault for marrying him, and how awful he was, and so that was the feeling I got is, what were you thinking even marrying him?
Mm.
And they were angry that they had paid for a wedding. But it wasn't a wedding like people do nowadays. It was a cake and punch reception at a church. So it wasn't.
Yeah, simple.
Yes, and small. So it was for them, it was probably expensive, but I don't want you to think it was wedding like people do
Right,
nowadays.
not like a
No, no, no.
$100,000 wedding or
No,
something like
no,
that.
no, no, no. And like I paid for a lot of it. So, but they were frustrated with that. And for them, it's how does it look that now we have a daughter who's divorced?
That's a good thing to touch on too. The image, especially with
'Cause that's
like,
what I would always hear is, what are the neighbors going to say?
yeah.
And what are people going to think of you now?
And that's the messaging, right? And the messaging is you got to worry about your image more than anything, more than what you think about yourself, more than your own autonomy and your own boundaries.
Yeah, because now you're
And
a single mom, and
yeah,
that just, back then in a small town in the panhandle of Texas, you were damaged goods.
and they're also great at getting you to jade to justify, argue, defend, explain all of your life's choices. And they're great at getting you on your back foot and trying to backpedal so that you feel the need to jade if you're going to be with them. And I think that's where it starts.
Absolutely. And then, but I didn't defend. I would fawn for sure. I would
Okay.
cow down just to them. And you're right. And I am awful. And
So
I would
you
defend.
believed it.
Oh yes. Yeah, that's why I kept doing it.
Okay.
That's why I kept going back to the crazy town. Let's
Okay.
do it again.
Deep down, I did believe it too, I think, growing up. And my actions proved I believed it because they are not very good at instilling a sense of worth and self esteem in their children. It's
Mhm,
either they create another narcissist or they create the one that thinks they're worthless. That's usually what I see with it. And when
mhm,
you think you're the one that's worthless, your actions and the way your parents spoke to you, that becomes your internal dialogue.
mhm,
And it's very harmful, very hurtful and harmful.
mhm. Heartbreaking. And I'm sorry you went through that as well.
Well, I like you, I try to use it as fuel to kind of like
Mhm,
learn
mhm,
and move through it. And I've learned a lot of lessons that I probably wouldn't want many of them repeated, but they have been helpful.
mhm, mhm,
So you got to that situation where you made it through school and you started doing the teaching.
mhm.
And then I guess at some point around here, you met another man.
I did. So I single mom, you know, just do my best to raise this child the best I can. And I was really trying to get it right, and and repetition compulsion, right? Not going to do this again. I'm going to learn. Uh, the past boyfriends and the last person, there was a lot of betrayal and inappropriate uh, relationships that, so I had a lot of betrayal.
Hmm.
And the betrayal piece was big for me. I just did not want I never want to be cheated on again. I would even say, I don't care if they hit me. I just don't want to be cheated on.
Oh,
That was my mindset. I'll take a physical abuse. I just don't want to be cheated on, just heartbreaking. Um,
the
so,
first husband did cheat on you?
oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, now he says he didn't, but I assure you,
Right.
there's no way he couldn't have. I mean, now he'll deny it, but
Sure. Sure.
I don't know if he would today. I don't know him. I haven't talked to him in 40 years, but uh, well, that's crazy. That's been a long time, maybe 35 years, but um,
So no relationship with his child.
and that's a tragic side story as well. You know, very sad. Sad for her,
Right.
and sad that he missed out on a great kid. She's an amazing kid, and has turned into a really cool adult. And she's amazing. I mean, she survived me and all my crazy, right? So bless her heart, because I, she had to live with a mom that was going through this, so it was
Sure.
hard on her as well, right? So I get a counseling job and a school counseling job. I'm still in graduate school. I'm probably working on my LPC. Back then, you did your 3,000. Did you have to do 3,000 hours? Is that your degree?
Yeah. So I think where I am now is 4,000 for an LPC.
Okay. So back then it was three. And so while I was working on my LBC part, the school counseling, I could start school counseling. So I got a job in this little town and as the school counselor. And it was a big deal. And so this, the high school principal came over and started like just coming to the elementary every day, and that's where I was. And the secretary said, I've never seen the high school principal over here as much as he is. And I was like, I don't know why you're telling me. And she was like, it's you. And I went, no. because I was dating someone, and he just he just he was pretty methodical and very manipulative about that, and really used his status in that role. And he was older, and so he asked me out for quite a while, and I said no, declined. I don't want to mix work, and just was relentless. And then kind of love bomby, I'll tell you. I went out of town to go snow skiing. My daughter was 5, and he shows up at the ski resort.
Stalking. So you were how old at this time? Around 20 something?
27.
27. And how old is he about at this time?
I was 28. He was 38, 10 years older.
Okay. And he's the high school principal, though, so he's got status in
Yes.
that realm.
He had been there a while, and people knew him, and he was the man, right? And so, I mean, and after that, it very love bomby. A lot of just, coming to school, visiting me, writing me notes, just all the things a girl would want to hear. And then started saying I love you pretty quick, and I was just putting the brakes on, and he just kept pushing. And, I just didn't have much. And, I mean, school people, we don't make a lot of money.
Sure.
But he could do more because he was older and he made more. And then, so we dated and started asking me to marry him pretty quick. And I just was like, I got to get out of grad school, have all these goals. I wanted to get my PhD. So I was on track for that. And I was like, I want to raise my kid and have all these goals I have for myself. And so finally was very manipulative in how he finally convinced me to marry him. And that's a whole story. I don't want to share too much because I don't want to hurt people that might listen to this. But so he checked a lot of the boxes, right? He was older. I thought he won't screw around on me. He's older. He liked my kid. I wanted her to have a good stepdad. I knew we'd live this modest life in this little town, but we wouldn't, we could manage. It just checked a lot of the boxes, right? And so we got married, and once again, on the honeymoon, it changed. No, you know what? The honeymoon was medium. It changed when we got back because we moved into his house, and I remember crying, thinking, I've done it again. Because I remember we were hot because we were moving, and I went to turn down the thermostat because I was hot. And he goes, don't touch that. And I went, what? He goes, yeah, you don't touch that. I'm the only one that can touch that. And I went, are you kidding? He went, yeah, I'm serious.
Very controlling.
I'm thinking, what? And I remember thinking, I've done it again. Here we go again. And it just got worse.
So I think it's important to note that it seems like the switch, it can flick and flip very quickly. So once they get what they wanted, they got married. One was on the honeymoon when the mask started to fall. One, the second you got back from the honeymoon, boom. And it's night and day.
Agreed. But I do want to say, looking back, if I would have had the language, love bombing, is this person really as nice as they say they are when they're not love bombing?
Right.
Are they genuine? Do they have empathy? Do they really care about you, or do they care what you bring to them? Do they care about how you look? So the inconsistency, how they handled stress, how the topic was always about them, how we always did what they wanted. I was so subservient because of the way I grew up, because I didn't want, all hell to break loose growing up, because things did go that way, that I was so already wired I was hardwired for these people, because that is the red flags don't look like red flags when they remind you of home, right?
Right.
Ingrid Clayton said that, right? Or that's where I heard it. And I think she's spot on. You mistake chemistry for familiarity. You don't know in your mind the only reason that this feels okay is because that's all you know, and it's toxic, and that's
Good
all
way to
you
put it.
know. And then our brain will choose familiar hell, right? Your brain will choose familiar hell because I don't think you realize you have options.
And I ever think back in this, like years ago when this was, I think people probably felt even more constricted. Because, like right now, if you're a younger person, you have all sorts of options that social media and dating apps have kind of brought to the surface. But back then, I guess this is the 80s into early 90s,
80s.
a much different world back then, much fewer options, I would say.
Absolutely. And a lot of pressure to be married as a single mom
Sure.
and in a small town, and in a super conservative area, you know, very conservative, very, very conservative area that, the mindset, you, you just were supposed to be married.
Sure. I've seen that a lot amongst like religious people, especially the ones that are more narcissistic. They are very controlling with their beliefs, and they can be very self-righteous, magnanimous, and it's more about them oftentimes. They want to put their beliefs on other people. And it always reminds me what Oscar Wilde said, it's not selfish to live as you want to live, but it is selfish trying to get other people to live as you live.
Hmm.
And that seems to me one of the things that people who are very conservative or religious, they struggle with that concept. Like, because they don't like seeing people living in a way that isn't congruent with their worldview. That
Right.
really bothers them.
Hmm. So, yep.
So, looking back on both of those, were there any clues, like looking back at it now, before like the mask started to slip? What
Absolutely.
what were those clues? Would you say?
Back then, I think I knew with both of them that these people, this is not, I think in my heart I knew these people weren't nice.
Right.
But everybody says they're so nice, and oh, they're so sweet to you, and look how what all they do for you, and oh, y'all are so cute together, and that's just surface.
Right. And that's where the groundwork was really sown
Hmm.
by like the way your mother would speak to you
Right.
and the belief in yourself that she did not instill in you.
Right. So the child language, that's the part I think is the sad part for a lot of my clients and myself. Growing up, if I ever thought about, well, that doesn't feel right, or I would get judged, like, who do you think you are to, you don't know anything, and you're just being selfish.
Mm,
In my mind, these men are doing these love bombing things, or trying to be controlling, or tell me what to do or how to dress, or all those things that are not okay to tell you how to dress, right? That's just not okay. You get to dress how you want to dress, but or act this way, or don't do that, or just so many things in my mind. Well, don't be selfish. Maybe they want you to just be the best version of yourself, which is not true. It's just power and control. But in my mind, I had that, well, maybe that's just part of love, is they tell you what to. It's
mm,
just sad. It's just sad, and very naive, very gullible, but very conditioned to tolerate this, because I had to tolerate it as a child.
right.
I had to, I didn't have choices. But I think, looking back, if I would have just been able to, have a different dialogue, or even a person to pull me aside and go, hey, how they're treating you is not okay. But everybody seemed to justify, oh, well, they're so nice.
Right.
Well, sure they are, and they present very well, right?
Sure. But often a very different person behind the closed doors a lot of times.
I heard that growing up, how nice these people I lived with were, and I remember thinking, they're not nice. And I remember saying, they present very well. I would say that out loud. They present very well.
And that also contributes, though, to you second guessing yourself and not believing in yourself more when you hear so many people saying how great they are, how nice they are, look how many nice things they do for you. It kind of
Hmm.
makes you second guess yourself and not trust your own gut and your
The
intuition.
language I got with that is how ungrateful I was.
Right.
That look what all these people are doing for you, and you're so selfish and ungrateful. Look at what they're doing for you, and so then a lot of shame.
And that's
And
the manipulative with strings attached giving, which a lot of them do love to do. But
mhm,
again, it's not really genuine if people want something in return.
mhm,
Right? Giving without the expectation of something in return, that's
mhm,
really the only authentic way to give. But giving with strings or giving with having it being thrown back in your face later,
mhm,
I mean, that's more manipulation.
mhm.
So,
So,
how long did it take you to get divorced from the second one?
oh gosh, it was awful. Well, okay, so my upbringing, you marry someone, you and I remember being super unhappy from very early on in the marriage, obviously, and the silent treatment, the control, it all just got worse. And he was severe alcoholic, and also gambling, um, and very deceptive, very dishonest, which is so disturbing.
Was he a big drinker in the beginning too? Or did that come out more later?
Now he was,
Okay.
and would justify it, minimize it, and that just got off the charts crazy. It just, the amount of alcohol that person consumed is was just amazing.
So was it like a daily drinking thing or weekends or
No, daily.
daily?
I mean, yes, a lot, one right after another.
Right.
And I don't know if you have experience with alcoholics, but it's intense, and they can drink a lot. But if I ever brought up drinking, I'd get the silent treatment for weeks. You know.
Punishing you for even bringing it up.
Oh yeah, we don't talk about that. How dare you? And don't you see how hard I work? And if I want to enjoy my evening, I will.
Yeah, a lot of justification there.
And then also that I'm so ungrateful. Look how hard I work, and so
Flipping the script.
oh, it was just awful. And then so I just kind of lived my life. I did most things by myself, and I had 3 jobs. And so, I've got my goals. I am determined to get to this place I want to be in my head, to be the kind of therapist I want to be, and I want to help people. Um, and then the future faking, because I was upset all the time. It'll be better when I don't work anymore. I hate my job. It'll be better when we move. It'll be better when I'm retired. It'll be, just future faking. Just hang on. So, he was unemployed for a couple years, and it didn't get better, right? The drinking
Couple
got,
of years. Ooh.
yeah. And that's a whole crazy
And you
story.
were supporting the family then at that point, I guess, right?
Yes. Um, I, well, and that was another piece. The more my success went up, the worse it got. So any accolades or awards or jobs that came my way, he did not like it.
Very jealous, I bet.
Oh, lose his mind. And then, I got asked to be on like the board of education at my university, and I thought he's going to lose. I thought he's going to have a stroke. You
That's a
know,
good clue, right? When they're not able to be happy for your success at all, That's a big one I've seen. They're very jealous, very competitive.
Oh my gosh. Um, I got offered a job, but I didn't go look for it. Somebody had heard about me. Hey, I heard you do good work with kids. Would you want to come work? Do you know what a children's home is?
For like kids that have been taken from their
Mhm.
parents. Yeah,
foster
yeah.
care. So I started working at the children's home, and I worked there for 11 years and loved it. Tough work, but loved it. And he just was not happy that I was asked to, why are people calling you for a job and nobody's calling me? Classic narcissist, right?
Sure, sure.
So I've got 3 jobs. So he's just drinking a bunch, and I mean, going to a different bar every night, and I'm just working. Now I'm paying for college, right? Because I bought her car. I bought it. I'm paying for college. He's not doing anything, but he tells everybody he's doing all this, right?
Sure.
And then, and finally, one day, I just said, I can't do this anymore. I cannot do this anymore. And he was like, what? I was like, this. We don't talk. We sleep in different rooms. We live separate lives than we have for years. I can't do this anymore. And then he was mad, and then, you know, but also kind of seemed relieved. I don't know. It was very odd. But then I had to help him find a place to live. It was just the craziest thing. Like, what? But um, and of course, it was all my fault.
Because I mean, he probably all those drinking nights, he's probably cheating at this point too. Probably.
I'm guessing, or at least inappropriate relationships that
Yeah.
he would not call cheating.
Right. Yeah. At the minimum, probably. Yeah.
Okay, you don't go to a bar every night. Are you serious? Yeah,
Right.
come on. And this guy loves attention, so
Yeah.
I'm just gonna tell you. Well, like all narcissists, that attention and adoration, and but also there was a lot to it. But so I finally, got out, and then I moved to the Dallas area, and so I got to get away.
Well, that must have been a relief at the time.
It was. I got to start over and create a life for myself in a new place where nobody knew me, and I just got to be Edwina and create a life for myself.
Yeah, it's got to be a great feeling. Very freeing.
It was. And my daughter was in college at that time, so she was living her best life, and so I finally got to get out.
Now, here's a couple of things I didn't ask you.
Okay.
Now, trauma bonds with both of them. How was that? The severing of those bonds. Did you still get like
You know,
desires to go back, or
looking back, I don't think I was trauma bonded to them.
okay?
Well, the second one for sure, and I don't even think the first one a connection. I do think I was trauma bonded to my college boyfriend,
Okay.
because that breakup, that relationship was not healthy. Um, but letting go that one, in my mind, it was love, right? I think it was a trauma bond.
Yeah, so that one was tougher for you
Yes,
because you were more emotionally invested in that one.
yes.
Okay.
These two, I didn't feel trauma bonded. Mm-mm.
Okay, that makes sense because you did it for different reasons
Yeah,
as
yeah.
opposed to, I guess, more of the love and romance. You did it more for,
Mhm.
I guess, what it was going to be able to do or what he said he was going to be able to do for you.
Well, yeah. Um, yes.
Now, did those guys Hoover too when it was all said and done?
Um, the first one, yes. Um, but in a way, he was, but he had already, he was dating a girl while we were still married that I didn't know
Hmm.
about, and she was pregnant.
Oh,
So his hoovering was more trying to just stay in my life. But I mean, he had a baby on the way, so that kind
So
of
was
took.
he trying to make you jealous with that too? Kind of throwing that in your face a little bit? Or like triangulate?
Yes. Hmm.
Because I know a lot of them do like to do that, find a way to contact you for no reason in particular, but it's really just to kind of brag or to show off or something along those
More
lines.
like to push my buttons. I think he liked to. He got a lot
Yeah,
of out of me being upset.
yes. Because
Mhm.
they say in the beginning, like the positive supply that a narcissist gets from a person, it doesn't get as powerful. Like it's not as powerful over time. But then the negative supply, the supply they get from making you upset, or the supply they get when they say, "Oh, I'm just joking, can't you take a joke?" They like that much more as time goes on. And I see that happens pretty frequently
Mhm.
where they just don't get that feeling anymore, the
Mhm.
positive from the positive, so they got to switch it to the devalue,
Mhm.
switch it to the negative.
That was definitely the second one for sure. Um, the first one, it was so long ago. I don't have a lot of memory, so I don't think true hoovering, but probably more just to just irritate me and to say very just devaluing things, right? Because
Right.
everything's my fault on both of them.
Without always your fault, never theirs.
Of course,
All of their bad deeds are somehow your fault for whatever reason.
it's always all my fault.
And I think back then also, I think today there's so many more avenues to Hoover as well. Like
Agree.
there's so many different,
Which back then we didn't have cell phones, right? So
yeah, such a big thing because life has changed so much. Like I'm 38 and I'm someone that like the internet was around when I was a kid, but that wasn't as big of a change as the smartphone going in everyone's pocket.
right, yeah.
That for me in my life was the biggest change by a lot. And
Hmm.
so now life's just so different. Everyone's addicted to their phones to a
Right.
certain degree. And there's so many opportunities for hoovers, for love bombs, and we're so much more connected, but the connections
Right.
not quite as intense, I would say,
Right.
because they're not as personal. Like back then, you're talking on the phone or in person.
Well, it was easier to go no contact, right? And you didn't have
Absolutely.
that language, no contact, you know. And then back then, also without internet, and you live in different cities, and you change your phone number on a landline,
You're free.
you're free. So, and back then, you didn't stay friends with your ex or something. That was just, it's inappropriate.
Right.
So, even back then, I mean, I don't know when it became okay to stay friends with your ex because I don't think that's healthy unless it's a really interesting, situation. But
Unless it's co parenting, maybe.
absolutely, you need to co-parent.
Right.
You need to co now in a healthy relationship, and you need to like wish each other well every now and then or something. But to remain in your life, there's still a relationship, right? I just feel like it depends on the people, but so back then you didn't have it wasn't as easy to hoover because um, and then the second one, his was more wanting to tell me that I wasn't doing things right.
Hmm.
Um, like I was like, you can't, I get to do it the way I want to, stuff like that. So again, more the negative.
Picking. They love to pick at the little flaws and to give you some sort of riot act
Mhm, mhm,
about something they feel like you're not doing right. And they make it a big production
mhm,
where it's a big to do. Edwina, this is where I think you should be doing with this, this, and this. I
mhm.
really don't like it. And, it's just laced with guilt and shame and
Right,
basically how they know what's best for you
right.
and how they want to control you, basically.
Control. It was control for sure. All power control. But I was so busy working so much, and I moved away pretty quick that there. But I so the hoovering, it wasn't like a hoover to get you back or anything.
Yeah, just like a poking Hoover just to get under your skin a little bit.
Mhm.
Okay. I guess that could be a little more merciful,
I think
perhaps,
she
but
got more kicks out of a smear campaign. I mean, because the
ah,
smear campaign was intense.
oh, so they did do that too.
Oh yeah.
So I guess you want to go into what that was like and what they were talking about with that?
I knew both of them. I knew their character. I knew they're both dishonest and deceptive, and they had done that with other people. So I was prepared for they were going to say these horrible things about me, um, and I was also prepared if my true friends know me, they know the truth, and the people who really know them know the truth as well, and that if other people want to believe, how horrible and awful I am, and you know if anybody knows me, I get angry. I've made mistakes. I am accountable. I will admit my faults. Anyone who knows me knows that I am not going to do horrible things on purpose or hurt people or say violent things or be dishonest or my my people that know me.
Right.
And so I don't know what all they said about me. Um and I just kind of prepared myself. You don't need to know. It's just going to hurt you because it's all nonsense, right? It's just crazy making.
Right. And that's a good way to look at it too, because you can't control what they say. And then it becomes a good measuring stick to see who your real friends really are.
Mhm,
Because the
mhm,
people that believe it, the friends and family that just believe the smear campaigns, it's like, well, they're showing you you're not quite as close with them as you thought you were,
exactly.
unfortunately.
Mhm,
But your real friends, like you said, they'll at least come to you, or they just won't. They'll flat out not believe it, or even best of all, they would say, "No, you're wrong." To the person giving the smear campaign, I know Edwina, she wouldn't do that. Right? Being
right.
loyal to people not in the room.
Mhm, mhm. So, and I feel like I live an authentic life, and I don't have a lot to hide, and I people that know me know my character, right? And I also admit that I'm not perfect, and I have made mistakes, and but I also know that I don't go around doing bad things to people and lie or cheat people or I think if anything it was that I don't I don't even really how you're like what would they say, but it was probably something like how horrible I was, or I don't know what they would,
Something probably said something about
something very
mother
negative
this or something this
or
that or the other.
something just off the charts, like what are you talking about,
Right.
where it's so ridiculous that you're like what, like in what universe do you live on?
They are good at being delusional, that's for sure, and just coming out of right field with things that make no sense.
Oh yes, like delusional. Like, "Are you okay?" Stuff like that, like
Oh, I believe it. I believe it. So, when was your sixth sense moment with all of this, where you finally?
so I met a non-narcissist. I met a healthy
Okay.
person, but I mean, I'm not gonna say perfectly healthy. We had our issues, and, I did not wanna get married, but, we presented as being married, and, we, created this really lovely life, and, unfortunately, he had an accident and he passed away.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
And then it was very, very difficult. So in my grief, I started dating someone, and I was a nice person. Had some had some had some red flags, and but so we dated a while, and then I met this person, and I am telling you off the bat, this person was different than anyone I'd ever met. And in my mind, I don't want to date anybody. I just want to have fun. I'm not going to get involved. I'm going to go out with this person. I We're not going to go out often, and I really didn't think anything would ever come of it. And so I just really wasn't in it, and so it wasn't love bombing or anything. But slowly this person kind of pulled me into this web that I can't even make sense of how it happened, and would tell me these stories about this life that I believed it. Why would you lie to me? I don't know you. Um, and created this kind of, I can't even describe it. It was so crazy. And it was very slow. And then all of a sudden we were dating, and then the love bombing stuff started. But it was also mixed in with all of a sudden, can you help me do this? Can you help me do this? Can you help me? I need you to help me do this. This money's coming in. Can we, it, and I couldn't, I was like, what is happening? Right. But then again, who do you think you are? And this person being nice, because they weren't rude, they weren't mean. But something always seemed off. And I'm just like, I don't know. But had an excuse for everything, and everything was over the top. But also, once again, everybody liked them. And so I got in this relationship, and then all of a sudden, we're like a thing. And I'm just like, something's, I don't know. And my friends were like, this guy's not okay.
Oh, your friends noticed.
Oh, everyone.
Oh, this is a situation where you were the last to notice.
No, I noticed, but I didn't. I was like, no, they're just stressed, or
You
he's,
brushed it off. Okay.
yeah, I would downplay it. No, I bet they're just tired, or oh, they had too much to drink, or oh, no. And then somebody ran a background check, and I got sick to my stomach.
Oh,
And I thought, what in the world? Years of financial abuse and exploitation. I mean, it was, so I started asking questions. And that's when the devalue started. And I mean, it happened so quick. I mean, one week wanted to know, did I want a 4-carat ring? And the next week couldn't look me in the eye. But that's when it started, when I started going, hey, tell me more about that business thing you said.
The jig was up at that point.
And then the more I ask, and the more I started asking some pretty important questions. Dude, if you're going to talk to me about, buying a ring, I can ask you some tough questions, right?
Sure. Without a doubt.
We hadn't dated that long to even be talking about rings. So that was definitely love bombing. And I mean, the devalues and how I was treated, it wasn't mean though. It was so just all of a sudden, just this look of contempt and just disregard. And the more I asked, the more questions I asked, the worse it got. And then I was like, you know what? I don't know who you are. We need to take a break or break up. Oh.
No, they didn't like that one bit.
No. And so I didn't know this narcissistic language, but it even got even worse. And then this person had some stuff at my house. And so I didn't want to do the exchange. I said, meet me at my office and I'll give you your stuff. And this is just a break. I'm going through a lot of stuff. And I'm in my mind going, I don't even know who you are. And I don't know what just happened, but
Right.
It certainly wasn't pleasant. But it wasn't mean, right? There were no harsh words. There was no, it was so devaluing. And I felt so just disrespected, but in such an odd way that it was hard to describe, because it was so under the radar. Death by 10,000 cuts.
This sounds like more of a covert variety, and they can be difficult to spot.
This person, I've studied this. This person has I think this person is a dark triad, and they have one part of their being that's grandiose and one part that's very covert. But this person is more dark triad. I have not been in the presence of someone that manipulative in my life.
And yeah, for those who don't know, dark triads, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy.
Yes. And then have you heard of the dark tetrad?
I have heard of that too, yes.
And then the sadistic part. But this person, even another therapist said, I got such a negative energy. I felt like he was dangerous.
Would he have
So,
like silent rages at all? And silent rage, silent treatments,
oh,
where you can just feel the energy is a little bit
you know,
different.
that when the eyes go black,
Yep.
that one. And then that look and that silent rage. And I've never been afraid ever like this. Like like I I've never been like I need to watch my back everywhere I go. I've never felt that with another human being. Um and not that it'd be physical harm. I don't worry about that.
Right. It makes
Um
it trickier though too that, like you said, there wasn't the harsh words, like
mhm,
really harsh verbal abuse or physical abuse or
mhm,
sexual abuse.
mhm,
Sometimes that can make it more evident. But
mhm,
when it's nothing like that, it's just kind of a feeling,
mhm.
then it's
That
harder for people to see it.
mhm. And then that one, definite trauma bond. Because I remember thinking, I don't know why I feel so hurt and why in the world, what do I miss? But I miss this person.
Right.
In my mind, I loved him, but I didn't know what I loved,
Hmm.
but I didn't understand trauma bond, right? And I mean, I was devastated. And because I couldn't make sense of what happened, and that cognitive dissonance that we talked about earlier, before the interview started, like I could not make sense of what happened, and and that's when I did my deep dive into narcissism, and I was trying to find a therapist to kind of help me make sense of all this, and a lot of just shame about that. How did I even get mixed up with someone like that?
The therapist did that?
The first therapist, um, kind of shamed me for, and her words were, "Wow, you were conned," and I was thinking, yeah, but now I feel worse.
Yeah. I hear that happens a lot where sometimes therapists that aren't familiar with narcissism, they could re-traumatize their
Well,
clients.
that was and then I tried another therapist that said they understood that person. Oh my goodness, no. And then I thought, well, maybe if I find somebody who understands childhood trauma, that that person was okay and did, but I just didn't feel like we were going where I needed to go. And so I finally found a therapist that understood narcissistic abuse. And then I started doing some good work on, you know, what did happen that I allowed these people in my life. And I do understand boundaries, but what's the backstory and the childhood trauma and the language and, the pattern, and what are the wounds I need to heal that did get me in these situations.
Sure.
And so that's when the true healing began. Excuse me. Is when I finally could let go and heal the backstory. What did happen to that little girl that she would allow these people that are also broken, that she's trying to heal and herself and help these people, but also tolerate these people that aren't healthy, that in that language that was in my head that I can reframe now and make sense of.
Right.
And then also learn from it and help my clients.
Sure. So I think two things are important there to note. One, that you broke up with that guy and it still really hurts you too. And I think sometimes people,
But in my mind, I broke up. In his mind, he broke up.
well, of course, because he wants to come out on top and
Oh, yeah, yeah.
be the rejector.
Yeah, yeah.
That's That's
And he
important.
even let me know that. You need to make sure I broke up with you. He even let me know that.
I can so see them doing that.
I had to make sure that I knew that
Yeah,
I broke up with you. I go,
right.
okay. If
Because they
that's,
need to be the one who cares the least.
and in my head, I'm like, if that's the way you need to write the story, write it the way you need to write it.
And that's the way to go about that too, right? To not even play that game with
Yeah.
them. But like
Okay.
I said, it's important to note that just because you do break up with someone doesn't mean there's not going to be pain and grief involved in that for you. I think that's
Mhm.
important to remember. And
Mhm.
then the other thing you were making me think of was when you catch yourself making excuses for people's behavior, not just one thing, but many things, that's something to take note of. So
Well,
watch out.
self betrayal, right? On so
Right.
many levels. And that, yeah, just classic enabler, codependent. But did that little girl have to make excuses for her parents' behavior?
Right. Exactly. So after those three relationships, that's when your light bulb went off and you began to put the pieces of the puzzle together,
Yes.
and you got a therapist that understood a little bit, that
Hmm.
was able to help you on your journey. And then
Hmm.
you realized, oh, this is what it was like for me growing up. This
Hmm.
is the messaging that I was constantly being given.
You know what? Can I add in there a big
Definitely.
aha moment I had recently? The covert mom passed away. I think when she passed away, I had permission to use all this language.
Okay.
I
Okay.
I wasn't, I didn't, I don't have to worry about that anymore. That, and I don't have to play that game anymore,
Right.
right? That this, I don't, all of a sudden it seemed like I had permission to feel my feelings and not be shamed. Um, I think that was part of the healing that I didn't put together. My therapist brought it up that her passing away is when the healing really started because I gave myself permission to start talking about the tough stuff.
Okay. So before, I guess, before she passed away, you kind of felt like you would be betraying her in a way, or guilt and shame about it.
So I'm not sure why I didn't give my self permission. She was older and sick, and I guess I felt like I had to be respectful of how we grew up or something.
Right.
Um, but, of course, she had her own tough backstory as well. And I understand that now. And but I also know the truth of what happened. So there's that. I know the truth of what happened.
That's important too. And I think it's a complicated thing when someone you know that's in your family or a loved one is narcissistic and they pass away. There's a lot of conflicting emotions that can come up because it can be confusing. Like sometimes it can be a relief, other times there's
Mhm.
guilt. It just depends.
I found myself grieving more the parent I didn't have.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I found myself grieving that, and then the grandiose stepdad is still alive, so he had to be the production and the grieving, and all that. So,
Performative grieving.
oh goodness, yes, it is a show. It still is.
I always call that LARPing. They're LARPing their emotions, and it's obnoxious, really. And it's like the people that you see online that like to film themselves crying or this, that, and the other. The performative empathy, performative
Mhm.
showing of emotions
Mhm.
because, oh, look how much I cared about this and this person. But we see it. We see it for what it is. It's just a show. It's
Mhm.
the show where they want people to think a certain way. They want to control their impression of them,
Mhm.
and it's, to me, it's repulsive. But
Mhm.
what if you don't see it? You don't see it, right? A lot of people don't see it.
People see what they want to see.
Now,
People
that's
see,
very true.
and people believe what they want to believe.
And that's one too that I think a lot of people on the more codependent side, that gets them in trouble because they want people to agree. Like because they want their viewpoint to be justified, to
Mhm.
be confirmed.
Mhm.
But it's not always going to be that way. And it's the same thing they get in trouble with a narcissistic person. They want them to agree and say, yes, you are correct. But that's the one thing they're never going to give you. They're never going to give you, yeah, you're correct. Instead, what they'll do, distort, twist, flip the script, all those other manipulation tactics, you'll get those. And it'll leave the person who, their belief in themselves might not be where it should be. It leaves them wanting that affirmation. Yes, tell me I'm correct. Tell me my reality's true. But they just don't get it. They don't ever get that affirmation of it. So it can be very frustrating for them.
Agreed.
So it's a painful process, but like you said, you learn a lot in the whole process. And hopefully, I guess the goal for us all is to stop the cycle. To stop the cycle where a codependent and a narcissist, they both continue the cycle. They just continue the cycle in different ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do find myself, especially with my clients, that, I can give them language to see the pattern, never tell people what to do, never diagnose. I'm not going to diagnose their partner, but we can talk about patterns of toxic antagonistic personalities and the patterns and what do they want and, what do they want to do with this situation and help them make sense of it. But I also find that professionally and personally, that young people, that if I would have had somebody at, early say, whoa, let's talk about what a healthy relationship looks like. And do you have a healthy relationship with yourself? Right. And what values are important? Because we live in this world of just, surface and what you look like and these things that you have or whatever you acquire that does not give you value. You have value. You have inherent value as a human being, just being here.
Right.
And what do you want to do with this? Right. So that's where I am right now, just on this path to kind of pave the way for people, that with this, my own journey, how can I serve and make the world a better place for myself and people around me, professionally and personally.
Sure.
We can live our best life, but we don't have to tolerate things because we're supposed to, or be the nice girl, or God put them in your life. Another phrase, God put them in your life for a reason. I guess you're supposed to help them.
Oh, that second part in particular can be pretty harmful, for sure. Because
well, evidently God wants you to be there for them.
See that's the part. Like, because I do believe a little bit that sometimes people can be put in your life for a reason, but it's not.
The reason is to set a boundary and run.
Yes, that's the other part of it, right? Where I would not say the second part of it's so that you can help them. It's like, no. It might just be to show you what not to do, or to run, or to practice boundaries, or to practice assertiveness. But adding that second part, I can see that being very harmful. But I also like what you said about, I tell people, behaviors. Focus on the behaviors. The labels of the behaviors, I do it. And people who call me out on that, they're correct. I do say narcissism a lot, but it is because that's what gets people's attention. But I still do say the behaviors are what's important. It doesn't matter NPD, BPD, CPTSD. The behaviors are the behaviors. If they're acting toxically, they're manipulating, flipping the script, gaslighting, it doesn't matter what their label is anymore. It matters what those behaviors are.
Right. And I agree with you. I do use the word like narcissistic pattern, right?
Yeah.
And I get people saying, you can't call everybody a narcissist. I say, I'm not calling everybody a narcissist. I'm saying that is very classic. If it looks like a duck, acts like a duck, sounds like a duck, walks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it probably is. And these people you're describing, I'll get out a book and go, if you want to talk about behaviors, this is a narcissistic style.
Yeah. Adaptation.
We can call it whatever you want. I really try to say toxic antagonistic or a selfish behavior style, exploitative or manipulative or whatever word you want to use. We can land on whatever vocabulary we can land on. It's not healthy.
Right.
And it's selfish. I think for me, the selfishness and the lack of empathy are probably the two top ones.
Yeah, even those two, without any other labels attached, that's harmful enough, right?
Absolutely.
Someone who's just selfish with little empathy, they can do a lot of damage for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, lack accountability, the irresponsible behavior, I think the lack of accountability is a top one for me as well.
Sure. Absolutely. And I think for all of the woes of social media here in this day and age, there is pop psychology out there, but I do see on Instagram and Facebook there are people who they do kind of talk about what a healthy relationship should probably look like.
Hmm.
And I think it does at least give them and people an idea, okay, if a partner of mine's doing this, pay attention. This is what a healthier relationship would look like. So people do have more of an idea. But I still see just as many people falling into the patterns anyway. Even with all the information out here, I still see people going after the same types of people, having the same relationship over and over again with a different person, which is how trauma is involved in there somewhere.
Right. And that's, where you go to the trauma in childhood, or where did you learn this? And what is going on to repeat these patterns, and what do we need to heal in you, right?
Absolutely. And I guess one of the last questions I'll ask you here is in your practice now, like, do you think there's more narcissism or just other kind of toxic behaviors today? Or what kind of general patterns do you see that your clients are running into?
So I see kids, teens, and adults. um, I'm seeing more with the young people, more entitlement and the inability to regulate emotions,
Mm,
that the tolerance that if things don't go my way, I cannot deal with it, right? And if I don't get it now, I want what I want when I want it, that I cannot tolerate it when I don't get my, that lack of intolerance that creates this intensity for, teens and, young people, young adults. You know, a client today, the fear was if I don't get it the next day, if I order on Amazon, if I do not get it the next day, I don't think I can handle it. Versus, I know,
that's a lot. That's a lot.
but, to learn to tolerate patience and the waiting and not getting everything immediate, that immediate gratification. Um, I'm going to call it cheap dopamine, right? Just the reward without the effort.
It's like our buddy Tom Petty said, the wait is the hardest part.
Agreed. And then, but I do have clients that will walk in and say, I'm in this relationship and I don't know what happened to me. And I'm thinking, here we go.
And you're a great person for them to see for that too.
Right. And it's a trauma bond usually, or they'll come in and, they can describe how much they love this person, but they can't tell me why. And in my mind, I'm thinking trauma bond. And
That's a
then I
good.
hear all these red flags about they've cheated, they've done this, but they come back and you're thinking, it's a Hoover. No, 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 it's not good. But they love me. They came back. No, 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 no. They come back because they can, right? They come back because they can.
It's a good way to put it, as you just said it there. When someone really loves someone, but they can't tell you why, that's probably a good sign something's up.
Right. Tell me why you love them. Because they're so good looking and they're so nice to me. Tell me how they're nice to you. Well, and there's the pause. Can't tell me, right? Well, we just have something. I can't explain it. It's a trauma bond, right?
Yeah,
You can't say that to someone right up front. And then we can dive in. What does this relationship look like? And what has happened to you? And where have you lost yourself along the way?
that's a
And
good one.
But I can't give those words up front because just like that other therapist with me, what do you mean I'm trying to bond it? I love this person.
Right. Yeah.
because
And
their love is genuine, right? Because their love is genuine.
and if they're not ready for it, it wouldn't do much good for you to rip the band-aid off and give them the cold hard truth right away. Kind of got to lead them to it gently.
And I could be wrong, just because I
Oh
think that
yeah,
at the beginning doesn't mean I'm correct either, right? So
sure.
letting that unfold and helping them, but also what are their goals for therapy? That's a big one. I'm not gonna work. You came to me, and I'm not gonna assume what I think you need to work on. We need to work on what you want to work on. This is
Right.
your life. This is, you have power over this. I'm not going to tell somebody. Now, obviously, if there's self harm or something, then we've got to address that. Or I can present something. This comes up. I'm thinking this. What do you think about us going to this direction? Because I think it would be healing for you. So
Sure.
give them an opportunity, but also they have power over it.
I would imagine in this day and age, there's a lot of mental health stuff people come in for, and probably relationship stuff. I would probably think those are the two most pressing things that you probably see.
So I see depression, anxiety, right? A lot of fear about a lot of different things, a lot of just, I'm so depressed and I don't know why, right? I hear that a lot. Finding your purpose, finding your meaning, finding your own joy in the little things. Um, Obviously, I I get a lot of people who just are hopeless.
Hmm.
They just, it just doesn't feel like they're ever going to find their way. My practice, I would say anxiety, depression are the top two. Grief, because of my own experience with grief. I was trained by a person a very wise man. So I was trained very well with grief work, but I think experiencing grief when my partner passed away, um, in such a tragic way and so suddenly at such a young age, that just gave me a different frame of reference with grief, and
Sure.
how devastating that was, that this human being was here one day and gone the next. Because he hadn't been sick, like it was just, and also a death that's hard to explain because people don't want to believe that freak accidents happen.
Sure. Because I know in that sudden death scenario like that, it takes a while for all of the feelings to come up. Like it can be a year later and you're still kind of unraveling it all and uncovering it and processing it. It takes a while.
Mhm, mhm. It took a while. It took
Absolutely.
it took a while. I had a grief therapist. I did have an excellent grief therapist. Didn't find a great narcissist therapist, but I found a great grief therapist pretty quick.
There
And
you
she
go.
was amazing.
So, one last thing to circle back to the entitlement piece. Do you think that stems more from people's parenting, or is it more just a product of the social media and internet era?
I think it's both. I think it's our culture, um, that I only have value if I have these certain things, and I want these things, so I should get them.
Hmm.
I think kids getting a reward for doing nothing. You get a sticker, you get a pops, you get anything just for being quiet for a minute. You get a
Right.
reward for being appropriate.
Hmm.
So I have to have a reward to act nice for 10 minutes so mom can talk on the phone.
Yes, they get too
Oh,
much for too little.
right. And then so the lack of boundaries because parents are so overextended and tired, and then so I think it's all of it. I think it's internet. I think it's culture. I think it's parenting. I think it's everything. I think kids are exposed to more than their little cognitive brains can handle. Their cognitive development. They can't. They get too much adult information that they are not prepared for, and they can't make sense of it.
Yeah, I mean, even that with just like pornography and things, I think that's an epidemic right now.
Well, these little kids are, scrolling, doomsday scrolling that, and then that YouTube turns into some pretty intense stuff pretty quick.
Sure.
And then, ooh, what was that? I want to see another one. Oh, what are they doing? Oh, what is that? Oh my gosh, look at that. And then I wanted to see it every day. I want to see more of that.
I mean, I couldn't imagine, like I said, I'm 38. If the stuff that was available today was available when I was 12, 13, 14, I don't even know. And as accessible as it is now, too, I mean, we don't even know what it's doing to people's brains because their brains are still developing until they're 25 or so. And so, what is all this internet, and all of this other stuff doing to the developmenting brain? I don't think they know yet. And I think we're starting to see some of the troubling effects of it, though.
Absolutely. I'm going to comment on that one.
Sure.
One thing I've seen, because I'm older, when we grew up, you couldn't look it up on YouTube. You had to problem solve and you had to figure it out. And you didn't have a phone, so you truly had to figure it out, right? Well, I guess I'm going to have to do this, this, and this, and I guess I'll have to do this. I mean, you did a lot of problem solving to get somewhere, or if your car broke down, you figured it out. Nowadays, they can't problem solve anything. Like if when I say to kids, let's think through it. We can figure this out. We don't need to ask. We don't need to look it up. Let's think through it. They look at me like I'm a crazy person. What do you mean think through it? We are two smart people. We can come up with a solution. I promise we can.
And that's empowering for them to hear because, like you said, I don't think they even know it. They don't think it's possible. They're so phone dependent and Google dependent that they just don't know.
We need to call somebody to come fix it. No, I bet we can figure it out. I really think we can. I think we can do it.
Yeah, I like that. I think people need to hear that.
Yeah, give yourself a minute. Let's think through it. We can MacGyver this.
Absolutely, MacGyver.
And then kids don't know what MacGyver is, so you got to explain.
I know what MacGyver is. I remember him. Everyone's favorite '80s mullet man.
But but then we do solve it, and we do some problem solving, and whatever the issue is, they have so much pride and they get healthy dopamine, right? And wow, we can think through it, and we don't have to. It's very uplifting and builds self-esteem and resiliency, and so I do think the internet has caused that, the lack of problem solving.
Sure. And that's just with parenting children, the elderly, like empowering them and giving them the ability to do what they can, to have their independence, solve their own problems. That is so important and indispensable. And I think a lot of people are missing out on that in this day and age.
I agree. I totally agree.
So I guess anything else you wanted to mention about either your practice, your experience with narcissistic relationships, your upbringing with narcissism, to close this up with a bow here?
I just appreciate the time to get to tell my story, and I hope it helps some people. And maybe if they need to seek therapy, they can find someone, or, hopefully seek out help somewhere. That you don't have to do this alone. There are people to help and people that understand.
So we will also put your information, if you want it, in the description.
Sure. I'm working on my website, so that's a work in progress. But you can find me. You can Google me, Edwina Townsend, and or find me on Psychology Today.
Oh, even better. And then the last two things here would be, so for you, how would you tell people to find a good therapist, especially if they've dealt with like narcissistic family, narcissistic relationships? Do you have any suggestions on how to find a good therapist for them?
Obviously read a profile, or I would call and ask, what are your specialties? What do you have experience with? Do you understand narcissistic abuse? Ask some questions. And then when you talk to the therapist, ask some questions. What does counseling look like with you? What's your experience? How long have you been doing this? What kind of clients have you worked with? if a belief system is important to you, what's their belief system? If that's what you need, and then see how you feel talking to this human being. Do you like their voice? Do you like the words they choose? Do you like how they are interacting with you before you even meet them? I offer a free phone consultation just for that purpose, because they need to know, just talking to me, do you like my approach? Because we're all trained differently. We all have a different approach. My education was different than your education. My life experience is different. Not every therapist is the best fit. But I also say, go with your gut, just like you would with a relationship. Trust that gut feeling. And then go a couple of times. If it doesn't feel right, ask for referrals. This just doesn't feel like the way I needed for it to go. The therapist won't be mad or disappointed. They understand. They want you to feel better. And it might take a few tries, to find the right fit for you. But you don't have to do this alone. And there are people out there that want to help people.
I think that's a very important message for people to hear. And even just that the first one you talk to, it might not be a good fit for you. And there's no problems in waiting till you get that gut feeling that you found the right one for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, Edwina, that I'm sure people learned a lot from this conversation and were able to identify with your upbringing, with the relationships you had, the struggles you had as a single mother. I'm sure there's tons of people that follow me that they know what that's like. And they probably feel very validated right now after hearing what you had to say. So thank you very much for sharing and being open and honest about what you've been through. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. Okay. Well, I appreciate you.
I was happy to have you here, and it was a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you so
So
much.
long, everybody.